Welcome to the latest edition of the Highland Park Update. My name is Matthew Hirsch from the Public Information Committee. Thank you to Highland Park Television and specifically Gary Leslie for facilitating this program. It's December 17th, 2015. It's in the 50s and it's raining. Today we have a very special guest. Councilman Phil George is with us today.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, Councilman George.
It's a pleasure.
We really appreciate your taking time with us. So, you really were able to hit the ground running when you joined council. You have a full plate on your policy portfolio, and I just wanted to go over some of your committee your committee assignments. You're the liaison to the redevelopment agency, the zoning board, the planning board, and Main Street Highland Park.
That's right.
That's a big load, and you know what I like to say is from Rome to home in Highland Park, place matters, right? And so your work really emphasizes how Highland Park, how the place takes shape.
Yes, and Matt, as you know, at every meeting I tell everybody at the end of the meeting we're having a planning board meeting, we're having redevelopment. Come out and see how the nuts and bolts of your town is getting done, because that is where the fabric of our town begins to take shape. The mayor and council set policy, and they may control the budget. They may draft ordinances for this, that, or the other that relate to quality of life or paving a road. But it's the planning board and the zoning board and the redevelopment agency and Main Street that fill that fabric up. They put the print on the batik. They tell you, or they're the avenue where our residents and our applicants make our town what it is, and that's why it's so important. My background is, I went to law school late in life. I didn't start till I was 30. I was in the construction trade in Newark and Jersey City. And then afterward, I was a county prosecutor in Atlantic County when the casinos were starting up. So I had some of the fun things like arson, vice, white-collar crime, and narcotics in the major crime unit. Subsequent to that, I was an independent attorney, and basically I only did work for other attorneys for a number of years. And then after my stint as president of the Atlantic County Bar Association, both Carolyn and I found jobs up here as opposed to where we lived on the bay in Atlantic City, or in Atlantic County. We moved up here. She was a senior planner at the Blaustein School. Subsequently, she was director of children's services for Middlesex County. I fell in with a senior partner for one of the large firms in Jersey who was going out on his own and needed somebody to do his trial work, and so for the last 15 years, that's what I've done. Our specialty is municipal law, governmental law. We represent planning boards, zoning boards, redevelopment agencies, library boards, municipal utilities. We are on all of the major municipal joint insurance funds. We represent a number of counties as well. Within that, our specialty is labor law, public entity labor law. I try most of the jury trials in federal court and state court for our clientele. I also handle a lot of the borough work, as we sit as borough attorney or municipal attorney in a lot of towns. So yeah, basically my liaison work is also my day job.
Obviously, you're very well versed in the goings on of town. You've been heavily involved for many years. We were talking before we started that you actually lived here in the 70s when you were in grad school. Your wife Carolyn Timmons was a two-term council person here in the 2000s. You served as municipal co-prosecutor in the 2000s. When you joined council, and considering your committee portfolio, what were some of the things that you wanted to tackle head on?
Well, one of the biggest issues was, to me, was that the redevelopment agency had some new blood, but it also was stuck with the inertia of the old redevelopment plan, which in some ways was a little too specialized. It's a scattered site, what we call a scattered site redevelopment plan. There are no large blocks where some large developer could come in there. And there were a lot of reasons for that when it was put together back in 2004, 2005. But the bigger problem was it immediately preceded the recession of 2007, 2008, when development money just disappeared for small-scale development. And in addition, it also preceded the development in the Supreme Court with the right to condemn and the process for condemnation, which then trickled down to New Jersey, which changed its law. So it had laid fallow for a while. As the economy has recovered now, and I tell constituents all the time, and you'll hear me say it, and you've heard me say it on the dais, we are now centrally located for two major industries, the university industry and the hospital industry right across the river. And that is expanding, and we need to grab some of that expansion. So that was one impetus. The other was more personal, I guess, is to take the skill sets that I have from my profession and put that to work for our town. I'm a big fan of Highland Park, a big fan of, born and raised in Central Jersey, born and raised in South Plainfield, right on the edge of all that development, all that major development on the Piscataway side of South Plainfield. Part of that was the farm I was raised on, where I was born in 1950. So I date back that far from our area, and in part we need to embrace what's happening with the future. We need to embrace. Highland Park has always been diverse, even when I was here in the 70s. I used to come to the bookstore here, take the bus from St. Joe's when I was 15 to come to the great bookstore here in Highland Park, which was the gathering place, in the 60s and 70s. And so I wanted to see that we preserve some of that feeling of diversity, a lot of people call it a hippie town, we're, fugitives from the 60s. I know the mayor and I talk about my inner self, that probably is one of those once in a while. And and also to see that grow and make room for everyone else, because that is part of what I do, is to help other towns do that, to craft ordinances, to work out some of the political problems, to work out some of the economic problems, the budgeting problems, how to infuse several different income streams from private developers, how to accommodate them in their project, but also make that useful for the town. So I wanted to bring that skill set to play. At the time, I had also sort of semi-retired. I had been the director of redevelopment in Newark. There was a change in administration. I was under Mayor and then Senator Booker, whose office happened to be on the same floor as right down next to my office. So I was asked to move on to make room for the new administration. Subsequently, my firm asked me to come back to the firm and continue the work that I've been doing.
What is downtown? What does Raritan Avenue need? What is the linchpin, I guess, that would really spur that redevelopment that I think people seem to really want? What are some? I mean, we went through Sunoco a couple years ago. That didn't really go. I guess what would be the big thing that would really showcase Highland Park's downtown as this place is happening?
That's hard to say. I think there are a number of things and that people bring up that the redevelopment board and Main Street deal with, and then in talking with people. One thing that's a background to that is I think the thought process for residents, especially newer residents, who are coming from inner urban areas, and one of the things we need to embrace is that we're becoming an urban area. One of the newer kinds of interstitial developments that are between a growing city and then a more suburban area. Excuse me. That new I think there's a new thought in Highland Park that, and I'm not talking about condemnation, but I think that residents now want to see Raritan Avenue, Woodbridge Avenue, Route 27 area begin to develop. But I think that part of it is we're not really sure exactly how that should happen. Right. You know, you hear the horrible C word, the condemnation word. But I don't think that that's the real issue. I think that on the one hand, they want to see something happen. They want to see it more lively. The walkability, you know, we have several plans. And I think that sometimes, in my opinion, I think some residents look a little bit skeptically at some of the programmatic things that we have that try to roll out what a town could become. And on the other hand, they say, well, you're never going to be a Westfield, you're never going to be a Lambertville, you're never going to be a Somerville. Some of the other, you know, the poster children for these urban interstices. Right. But so I think there's more and more of a feeling to that, but people aren't exactly sure because you say, well, a developer could build a 4-story mixed use, and mixed use is something. There's old and new concepts about mixed use, and quite frankly, I have some hesitation about it. I'm not certain that every building has to have a store on the bottom because we may be maxed out on that. I know we're maxed out on small spaces. We really need, if we're going to get some nice business in, nice restaurant in, we need to have some little bit bigger spaces available. You know, instead of a small 20 by 40 space, we may need to look at 2,000 square feet instead of 800. The problem with that is the town is developed on a 20s pattern where the lots are 30 or 40 by 100 and they only allow for so big of a building. Right. If you look at the redevelopment plan, you'll have a block that's, you know, a lot and block that's ready, that's in the development plan, and right next to it is an old-fashioned mom and pop shop that may or may not be occupied with a couple of apartments upstairs that's out of the plan. Right. So that's a problem with the scattered site plan that we have to deal with. So people are concerned, well, are we going to lose that small flavor? Developers know how to build around that. They know how to do that. And we have to be more developer friendly, and we have to recognize that the developers that we were in litigation and cost us, you know, high 6 figures to litigate, you know, with the large developments that are not on Main Street that we now have. They're also bringing residents that have this mindset as well. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's a good thing about that. But these developers that would develop downtowns know how to do that, and these are the people that you want to work with. The problem that they have, again, is to look at a project and say, how can we put this together? And one thing that I know, and I believe that the council knows it as well, is that we need to work with them to work at those assemblies, not in condemnation, but in enabling that. So when you tie that together, then the question becomes, well, what do the residents want to see that be? You know, what do you want it to look like? Do you want 2-story? Do you want 3-story? Do you want street-level residential? We want street-level residential in the center blocks, and put your commercial space more towards the end. Do you want rental? Do you want condo? You know, I know there's tax considerations involved in that, but with our emphasis on our 2 big industries, the universities and hospitals, our urbanization, you know, what does town want to be? Right. And I think that's the journey that the town is on, is rethinking that.
Moving forward, I guess, in exploring the town's identity, and you mentioned Rutgers and the hospitals, how much of those things and the attachment to New Brunswick will drive a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to development, I guess specifically on Raritan?
Well, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is very involved in very serious, you know, high-level development projects and parking projects and mixed-use projects. And he made a comment that made me think a little bit. He said, yeah, Highland Park has a, because we're talking about traffic and parking and so on. And he said that, yeah, Highland Park has a lot of downtown traffic, but it's primarily its own residents. It's not a destination. And it gave me pause, because I know when you look at a lot of these urban, small urban communities that have revitalized either by accident or just by luck or by plan, they do become destinations. So, I mean, that's one of the identities that we may want to look at.
I know that the mayor is looking to see if it's feasible to have Highland Park designated as a transit village, which would present all new types of opportunities for how downtown takes shape. Obviously, that is because of our proximity to downtown New Brunswick. I guess what are we seeing as far as trends in Highland Park? Who's moving here? Are they commuting? Are most folks affiliated with some industry or employer in New Brunswick?
From my understanding, and I'm probably not the best versed in this, but in just talking with people in general, talking on the street, there are a number of people who are buying homes, not only in the new developments such as Pulte, but buying homes generally, because some people want to live here, but they don't necessarily want to buy those homes. And some of our housing stock, our charming old arts and crafts and catalog houses, like I live in, that always needs work, they want that because they want the yards and more walkable to school. But in any case, from walking during campaigns and from talking with people, I believe that they are largely affiliated with the university industry, not necessarily only in New Brunswick, but on your Piscataway campus, on some of the outlying campuses, some of the industries, Bristol Myers, now the other pharmacy companies that are located nearby. You have Colgate, which is going to become their headquarters. Some of the tech companies, it doesn't take a lot of room for a tech company. So you've got a lot of them, especially along Centennial in Piscataway. And I believe that this is, people are coming here for that industry, but they don't necessarily stay in New Brunswick at night. They are here, and you may see them at Indus. You may see them at 418 Hamburger. You may see them at the Bridge. You may see them buying a bottle of wine at Pino's, or shopping at Stop and Shop. So, and this is largely I would say a relatively recent development, maybe last 5 years, 6 years. Again, coinciding with the beginning of the recession, loosening its hold on us and making people a little more mobile, looking at more opportunities, coinciding with the growth in New Brunswick of the hospital and university industries.
There have been a couple issues specifically that you've dealt with with planning and zoning that have piqued people's interests, and specifically, and I guess I wanted to get your take on why people are concerned about them, and from a local government standpoint, what can be done to address these concerns. And I think specifically, most recently, the planning board addressed an issue with Rite Aid, which had its windows covered along South 4th, and as they redid the inside of their retail space to make room for a new wellness center, which presents a lot of opportunities for them, a lot of opportunities for residents, and is a good use of that space. But at the same time, those windows covered up were not what some folks really anticipated. What did the planning board hear during that process, and I guess why do you feel that there was the concern that there was about that?
I think that it's always been an issue for a long, long time. And when they redid the building years and years ago, it was an issue. There was an issue which still perplexes a lot of people about the small parking lot and why it's now blocked. But I think the big, this round of incidents with Rite Aid, and when you have a commercial resident right in the center of town, no matter what they do, it's always going to be an issue. The issue was that came out of a practical problem. They were doing the work at night, so that they could keep the store open. Remember, it's one of only 2 Rite Aids in New Jersey with a liquor license. So it's a very profitable store. They wanted to keep it open at the same time to keep the revenue stream going. And the movement of the boxes to block the windows literally happened overnight. We heard in the planning board hearing that the new owners did not realize that the resolution was in place from a long time ago that said that the windows should be open. If you listen to Main Street and some of their important work, they are very, very driven by having retail space with windows on the sidewalk. But at the same time, I think I even mentioned it at the planning board meeting that I remember the old days when those windows were there, yeah, but their retail was stacks of toilet paper and cans in the window. Not all that great. So it kind of bit everybody at the same time, and it really irritated a lot of people. First of all, the Main Street and Planning Board members, and I believe it was Ms. Hammond, the Planning Board Chairman, that first, immediately that morning brought it to the mayor's attention and the construction officer and the zoning officer. As a result of a number of meetings to see what could possibly be done, it was determined that they had to come to the planning board because of the old resolution that the windows should stay open. And at the hearing there was a presentation that they thought that they could convert it into street art, into a curated gallery, without going into the details of that. That ultimately was done because the question was, legally, very theoretically, you could make them take it down. But the cost of doing that and the acrimony that would cause and the balance is, Rite Aid they told us at the hearing that they're going through the process of getting their wellness centers declared licensed by the state. They have to go through a process because it is a state-regulated medical facility. And they anticipate that which will be done, I believe, within the year. So the question is then, well, that can serve our residents, and that can provide a benefit to our residents. And the balance was the windows versus the wellness center, the windows versus a established commercial resident of the town. And it was a difficult situation. And again, it's one of those circumstances, I think, where in order to settle the dispute, nobody's happy, but everybody thinks it's fair. In my world in court, that's what a settlement is. Nobody likes it, but everybody thinks it's fair. And that's what the planning board was faced with, and I believe that at the same time, there's also some feeling that what we were talking about before, as Highland Park evolves, that we've been too stringent, that we have a bad reputation with builders and other commercial concerns in the area, that we're overly restrictive, that we are too crossing the I's and dotting the T's. We don't have the give and take or the ability to facilitate more development because of being as strict as we are or different from other towns. So I think all in all, maybe the compromise was forced on us in some ways, but given the cost of battling that in another arena, it was probably a good balance. One of the concerns was that, and I voiced it very specifically, and I also spoke to the managers from time to time, even before the hearing started, that we want to see, I want to see the curating agreement with Mason Gross done before final approval is granted. And I believe tonight you'll see at the meeting that is part of the resolution. And I think it's fair. And I think we accommodated a commercial resident who's in the center of downtown, and hopefully we can do more in the future with them.
The obviously a big component to downtown, but also our neighborhoods, is the town's walkability. The ability to get from one place to another without ever having to get in your car, which is an appeal. Which is not only what I've seen is a philosophical aim of town, but also a cultural one too, where many residents have to walk. Recently, there was a sidewalk improvement program where the borough provided interest-free loan for residents to fix their sidewalks. Maybe tell me a little bit about where that program is and how that fits into kind of the bigger picture of town.
Sure. Obviously, for it to be walkable, we're not some rural West Virginia town where my father is from, as a Russian immigrant, but I loved walking in his neighborhood up and down the hills. We need the sidewalks to make it walkable. And I had a big chunk of sidewalk that had to be replaced, and I had gotten estimates on how much it would cost. The program that was put in place provided 5-year payouts in the form of a 1-year annual payment as an assessment. People call it a 5-year interest-free loan, and essentially that's what it is. But the borough was able to get an excellent price by accumulating the properties that were going to be done by the contractor. There, it wasn't just, if it was just my sidewalk and your sidewalk, it would be one price. But for 50 properties, you get a better price. And what they did was they're going street by street, so they'd work a street on a particular week, not have to move all over town. A contractor makes money that way. He's not extending his facilities and getting it done. The benefit was no contractor's going to let you pay over 5 years, and no contractor's going to let you pay for no money. Other people were dissatisfied with that, and they brought one lawsuit, and there currently is another lawsuit pending. And it is what it is. But quite frankly, I think the program is excellent, and I think that the program allows people to get it fixed that might not be able to do it otherwise. It's expensive, but it's A, it makes your neighborhood walkable. B, it increases the value of your property. It looks nice, and it looks nicer than broken up sidewalks and a stretch like I had where the prior owner had to replace the sewer lateral, had torn the sidewalk out. It was just a mud hole. And I kept patching it, and it would never work. My driveway apron was falling apart. So regardless of the lawsuits, it's a beneficial program, and I hope to see that we're able to do that in the future as well. The status right now is, and I think the mayor's made a wide decision with the borough attorney. We know that the program had some glitches in administration, and in disseminating information and gathering it back. But that will be improved if the program goes forward, and I think it'll work very well. And I think it's a benefit to making us walkable, because some people think that they look at well, let's make a town walkable. And we have the walking school bus, for the kids, for the younger children especially, going to Irving and Bartle. But what I always said was, but walkable, you talk about downtown and the crosswalks and all that kind of stuff downtown. How do you get there? You have to walk up South 2nd to get downtown. So you want to facilitate that. Because you live in my neighborhood, I thought it would be nice to facilitate that by planting roses along my sidewalk. I'm not the world's greatest gardener, I admit that, but they do look pretty, and people walk by and they look at it. I put some paintings on my house. There's a few little sculptures here and there that people look at. More and more and more, I think our neighborhoods are doing that. They're getting that inspiration to say, it's nice to walk here, and it's nice to have a nice place to walk. So we're kind of entertaining each other more and more and more. I'm seeing more of that happen. And some of the houses are putting out, challenging artwork, and that's a good thing. That's really when it becomes walkable. Right. The combination of actually having the facilities of walking, and people beginning to come alive with that. That's why we're going to be a walkable community. That's what's working.
Recently, Highland Park was awarded with a Complete Streets designation, recognizing the town's walkability. And obviously, these sidewalk programs and just an overall plan to get out of your car and to actually get out and walk is integral in that. And you mentioned the walking school buses as well. Can you talk a little bit about the Complete Streets program and how that informs a walkable lifestyle?
The Complete Streets program, and my fellow council people administer that specifically, but from my perspective, the Complete Streets program literally says that the walkability, the usability, the accessibility of a town is looked at by thinking of it as a complete unit. That approach is relatively new, but the organizational plan itself has come together as a lot of the experience of a lot of different areas who put those programs into place. There actually is a very, very excellent manual available online I have on my laptop. But I think that the way it's trickling down in Highland Park, I mentioned there was a problem with a property over on the north side. Not a problem, but it was an application to come in and do some changes to a house. Old house, old trees, old sidewalks, new planning. There was a debate on how the sidewalks would be put in, and would they do this or would they do that? Would they have to remove trees? Could they do this? What about parking and so on and so forth? I was not a member of the board, but as liaison, I said, we're a member of the Complete Streets, and we encourage the integration of all this. And the walkability is what you see and what you smell and what you hear as you walk along, and making that a better experience, which makes for better residents, it makes for better citizens, it makes for better merchant enterprise. And said, remember that you could bend around these trees. You don't have to make the sidewalk straight. And was one of the first incidents that I know of using Complete Streets as a standard to say, okay, let's bend the sidewalk.
That's great.
I heard that unfortunately the borough arborist looked at the trees and decided that they probably had to come down because of their age and their condition. Right. But it's the first time, and now the boards are aware that they can start to change things around. I know on my street, when they were doing the sidewalk project, there were a couple of trees that people had planted in the right-of-way where the borough decided to go around them. And it does make it much more walkable, especially in our south side is where a lot of the rentals are. They're closer to the street, they're closer to each other. It's kind of the old school neighborhood that makes it such a great charmer. And so the sidewalk kind of winds around. It's kind of cool.
And then just one other thing on Complete Streets and walkability is access to our transit center, to our transit and employment centers, and we've heard a lot about the possibility of a shuttle, of a jitney that goes from Highland Park to New Brunswick and back. Can you give any update on where that is?
The update is difficult because of the funding and the partners that are needed. I've talked to a number of commercial enterprises in town, and they're very much forward it, and they have indicated they would support it. We did meet, and I believe I've reported at council meetings some time ago. The mayor and several of us met with Rutgers, who would be able to provide drivers through their program as opposed to us, because of the number of students, also the number of employees and faculty commuting to the Rutgers industry areas. The plan, and we came up with a theoretical plan, a route that would run, loop around the downtown campus, the train station, back here, run up Woodbridge, circle back around, come back down Raritan. We know that there are a large number of students that live here, a large number of faculty and employees that are here. Main Street did a study, shows some 60% of the traffic that heads across the river heads to the hospital or university industries. The problem is that, it may not be a problem, I think it's something to keep in mind, As development on Raritan goes forward, that's when the shuttle falls into place. It would be nice to have now, but I'm not sure that the volume supports it or the partners are there. It would cost about, Rutgers' plan I think was a little too much. They had basically a 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every night. I don't think we need that, but I think we want to pick up the party crowd to come here on Thursday and Friday nights, the students. And then the working and study groups that travel from early in the morning to about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So we got a price on that, what it would take. Picking up the shuttle is probably the least of our worries. But getting that program going, it has to be funded. So I think going forward, when we look at the Raritan development in particular, where we're going to put in a lot of residential, we want to look at that shuttle. And don't forget, a lot of downtown development now, a lot of the urban interstice towns are looking at reduced parking because a number of the residents are not interested in driving. I have a millennial kid. He doesn't like to drive. He'd rather, having gone to school in Queens and Manhattan, he and all his friends, they'd rather be right there or take mass transit or walk. I also spent some time in San Antonio and Dallas looking at some of the developments there in the Pearl Brewery, especially in San Antonio. They created their own neighborhood, live, work, eat, play, and it's all walkable. It's spread out. It's like half the size of Highland Park, but it's the old brewery, the old Star Brewer, Pearl Brewery. That's more and more and more as people like old me age out, although I kind of like that too. I like downtown Jersey City. I like downtown Newark when I was a kid. And when I was in construction, I was in the old Italian neighborhood on Ferry Street. I like that. I'd like to see it happen here. But we need more and more and more. All of these trends are going to combine. And again, we talked in the beginning about what does Highland Park want to be. That's evolving. And what Highland Park wanted to be when I was here in the 70s isn't not necessarily what Highland Park wants to be now. And a lot of the people are still here. Right. I still run into them a lot of times from when I was the crazy kid building racing motorcycles in Dr. Chopper's garage. Although I'm still doing that in my own garage.
You're still tinkering.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, we really look forward to. I mean, you've done a lot, obviously, in your first year and a half, and we look forward to seeing what's in store. As you continue to work on council.
I look forward to working for Highland Park and in some of these concepts are not amorphous. These concepts, but we all need to really start thinking about them, and we need to stop being contentious about it. We need to get over that not in my neighborhood, not next to my house kind of thing. This is all good stuff. All the new faces around here, aren't threatening us. This is new blood. It is so much fun.
It is. It's very exciting, and it does feel like we are on the precipice of a lot of great things in town. So, Councilman George, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And until next time, I just wanted to thank Gary Leslie and Highland Park Television. You heard what Councilman George said. A lot of big plans for Highland Park. He and his colleagues on council need your help to make. Highland Park wants you to make Highland Park the place that you want. So get involved, and we'll see you next time.